So I was recently browsing AliExpress and I saw what looked like a very promising new field watch. And while it was one of these military designation field watches, so it looked a lot like loads of other field watches, it didn't seem to actually be a one-to-one clone of anything. It seemed like it had some originality to it, which was good. So I ordered one, but then moments later, I saw a different one on AliExpress, a different military field watch. And boy, oh boy, did it look similar. I mean, so similar that I felt like I had to buy both of them just to work out if secretly these are the same brand behind the scenes or something. Now, here are the watches in question. The resemblance is pretty striking, isn't it? Especially the main watch itself, the case shape, the detailing on the dial. I mean, these look almost one-to-one exactly the same, and they're both brand new releases. So it's highly unlikely that one of these has just copied the other Chinese brand because they released within days of each other. Now, you'll have to let me know in the comments if these are actually a homage or clone of something else that I haven't really heard of. At first, I thought they were a copy of the Bulova Hack, but on closer inspection, it doesn't seem to be the case. They do seem to have a fair few differences. So let's take a look at them anyway. Let's see if we can work out if Thorn watches are actually Addies dive watches. Now, I've not taken a look at Thorn before, which is this one here. Now, I had to take a look at the boxes inside just to make sure I knew which watches these were, because I have ordered quite a few from AliExpress recently. Now, this one was from the Heimdallr store, so I know that's a separate watch brand. Maybe they're the ones actually making it, who knows? But not the best watch brand name out there, maybe not the worst. Can't say I appreciate the Comic Sans font there. And in here should be the Addies dive. So I'll link both of these watches in the video description if you want to check any of them out. Now, the packaging's definitely different. This is the more standard, like AliExpress packaging. This I have never seen before. I mean, it looks more like a toolbox, but it is easier to open. Doesn't destroy your fingernails. So let's take a look. It's actually a very good looking little watch, that. Now, they both cost me under £100, or I think with import fees it was maybe a fraction over £100. And they both seem to be steel automatic field watches, which is a combination that's hard to compete with even for the big brands. So here is the first one. Let's take a look at the supposed model name. So wow, this was actually £81 all in. That's including import fees. It's called G11 at one point, and then SHY-043. First impressions of this watch are very good, actually. The strap is maybe a tad better than I was expecting. These fabric straps are often super cheap, whereas this one feels fairly firm, actually. Might get a little scratchy there, potentially, but feels higher quality than I was expecting. And the case is all a matte finish there, like a blasted finish. It is a little bit rotund for a 36mm watch. And it also has very odd case back. So it's got like an octagonal case rear, which might be a little troublesome to remove, actually. Not really a standard tool, this. Fairly sure I don't have one. Within there is supposedly a Seiko NH35. And what crystal is it on here? Apparently it's just acrylic. Let's have a feel. Yeah, definitely acrylic on the top of there. I'll give you a close-up look. Very cool retro watch there. And it looks good. I have to say, with regards to the details and that, it doesn't look a million miles off something like the Bulova. It does have a similar case shape as well. Rather straight lugs there. Intrigued to see how that one fits on the wrist. Let's have a feel of this crown. Oh, it's got a screw-down crown as well, which is pretty nice. Don't think I was expecting that, especially for this sort of money. So yeah, that's your first look at a Thorn watch. This is the new field watch they came out with. But more importantly, let's have a crack at the Addies dive. Supposedly, the Addies dive AD2079. Now, on AliExpress, you often have lots of sellers selling the same watch, like 20 different sellers selling the same Pagani design watch, for instance. But I don't think I've ever seen one where there's been a very similar watch under two different brand names. And I can tell straight away there's definitely some minor differences here. The first one is the crystal, but we'll get the tape off. Also, the strap looks a little bit different. One thing I do like about both of these watches is neither of them have the tacky branding like this on the dial, which helps a bunch. Snip that off and take a closer look. Now, immediately, the watch on the right feels lighter slightly, and it also is a touch thinner. But the main point of focus, the dials are extremely similar. And here's a look at them side by side. Even the case shape is near identical here. Now, even with these designation field watches, for example, there are other G11 field watches out there, they do all look extremely similar, but these watches are beat for beat identical in almost every single way, which is what made me suspect that they may be from the same factory. But, you know, now they're in the hands, I'm not convinced they are. They certainly might be sharing some similar schematics. But for starters, the crystal, can you see the one on the right there clearly has much more blue anti-reflective coating on it, which suggests it might not be acrylic. Let's have a look. So the Addies dive cost me £88 all in. And yes, it says here mirror material, so I'm assuming that is glass. K1 mineral, and definitely feels much different and sounds much different than the other one. So depends what you like, really. The Addies dive version will have better scratch resistance, but you won't be able to buff scratches out as easily as with the acrylic on the left. And also it provides a different viewing experience. The acrylic gives you much more kind of edge, distortion and blur, which some people really like. And in certain lighting, it also looks a bit clearer too, as you can see here. And while the cases are very, very similar, even from side on, the finishing is actually a little bit different. So not only does the watch on the left have a plain crown, but that also has a blasted finish, whereas the one on the right has a brushed finish, which wasn't immediately apparent on the stock images. I'll get the calipers out in a second. The one on the right is definitely thinner. As for the strap on the Addies dive, it's unusual. It almost has like a memory foam effect. It kind of holds its shape when you move it, and I'm assuming that might partly be because of this leather section there, but I don't know, even the bit there seems to hold kinks, so I'm really not sure which one's better, you know. They're just different. And both of them have the quick release tab, so you can quickly switch them out. Even this one retains the same octagonal case back as well, only this time it's got all the etchings in, whereas the one on the left is plain. How unusual. So I don't think these are necessarily from the same factory, but it's almost like they've been given the same project to work on, and they've just iterated on it in two slightly different ways. As for which I prefer, I'm really not sure, you know. I think maybe I prefer the kind of dial and crystal of the one on the left with the case of the one on the right. Maybe you could do a case swap, given that they are very, very similar. The one on the right is also using an NH35, was it? Yeah, NH35A as well. So even that's the same. But let's just get the exact measurements. So for the Thorn watch, dead on 36mm wide. Lug to lug, 46 on the nose again. Thickness with that crystal, 13.7. It's like a boxed crystal, that, so it's curved at the edges and fairly flat on top. Without that, it's more like close to 11mm, so not the thinnest, but it is using an automatic movement. Let's just see how different this Addies dive is. 36 again. Lugs look a little bit slimmer, but intriguingly, it's actually slightly longer lug to lug, 46.3. And just how much thinner is it? About 12.7 thick. That's with the crystal, and without it, it's about 10mm. So yeah, about 1mm thinner. That's with the crystal, or without the crystal, still about 1mm thinner. So here is the Thorn watch on the wrist, and I think it looks mighty good. It certainly looks and feels better than the vast majority of watches you can get on the likes of Amazon at this price, no doubt. Maybe prefer this one out of the two. The lugs are perhaps bit straight for me. Maybe this would look better on someone with bigger arms. So my wrist is 6¼ inches, and normally 36mm is my sweet spot, but just due to the straightness of those lugs, as you can see, it isn't the smallest fitting watch, this. I'd say it fits more like a 37.5, 38mm watch. But for the money, it looks really good, and doesn't have any glaring downsides either. It doesn't have disgusting branding all over it or anything like that. It just looks, you know, like a military field watch, and a fairly attractive one at that. Not sure the strap works. I think maybe on a brown leather this would look killer. And then there's a look at the thickness of it. I'll just zoom out for comparison's sake. So yeah, not the thinnest though. It's the only thing with this. Bit like the Bullover Hack. Case is similar too, but the Bullover had much more tapering lugs than this. And there is the Addies Dive 2076. Another reason why I suspected these were made in the same factory is the fact that these don't just come in black. They also each come in identical white and red colours too. Red one looks quite interesting. I've not seen that before. But yeah, the other two colours also seem to be exactly the same choices, which I thought was coincidental as well. Definitely feels and wears smaller, this one. Must be the thinness difference there. Looking at the lugs there, maybe they tapered down a fraction more as well, I think, compared to the other one. This strap isn't as nice on though as the other one. I feel like this could get frayed, maybe a tiny bit scratchy too. Just like the Thorn, this watch also has a screw down crown there as well. So water resistance should be fairly decent. They claim on this Adizdive 200 meters waterproof, which might be true. Maybe that's the reason for the peculiar case back. And I probably would trust it swimming. Definitely not scuba diving. And I've just checked on the Thorn listing. Now that one says 100 meters, which, I mean, it could be considered less, or it could be them exaggerating less, who knows. But they both feel like they'd be fairly competent in water, at least from first impressions. Maybe there'll be some secret giveaway signs when we switch out the lights. So we've got the Thorn on the left and the Adizdive on the right. Very similar distribution of lume. It just looks like the Adizdive is thicker. And while the Adizdive definitely had the edge in terms of initial brightness, been in basically a minute now, and they're still both holding on relatively well. I think the Adizdives maybe got the slight edge here, but not by a huge margin. Do you think these are from the same factory? I mean, they definitely have certain similarities, no doubt, or is something more peculiar going on here? I'll link them both in the video description either way. I think they're actually both pretty capable, but I will have to get these on some better straps. I feel like that's what they deserve.